All right. But we will do verse alert first. And then we'll get into kind of a summary. We're going to blaze through Exodus 24 all the way through 40, and then touch on some like macro stuff, focus on some other things in the weeks to come. But verse alert is Exodus 34:6. And the reference is Exodus 34:6. And the Lord passed by before him and proclaimed, the Lord God, merciful and gracious, long suffering and abundant in goodness and truth. Exodus 34:6. Let's do that one more time. And the reference is Exodus 34:6. And the Lord passed by before him and proclaimed, the Lord God, merciful and gracious, long suffering and abundant in goodness and truth. Exodus 34:6. All right, so what we're looking at here is the tabernacle. There's a lot of different parts and pieces when it comes to it, and an exhaustive detail how to build and prepare each piece, which pieces are overlaid with gold, which pieces are overlaid with brass or bronze, how it all fits together, whether you're making all these curtains and linking them together. There's like 5 of them all linked together, and then you throw it over. There's like the inner curtains, and then there's the outer ones, which are like that, and then you have the whole courtyard, which is like a big sheet that goes around the outside. And this is God's house. This is where God lives. And it's really interesting about how Moses is told to follow the exact pattern that that God gives him while he's on Mount Sinai. Talk more about that at the end. But there's sections, right? It has everything to do with holiness. So as you enter God's presence, the closer you get to God's presence, the fewer and less often people can go into his presence. So you have that big kind of wall curtain that keeps everybody out, except for the people that are going to specifically go in and do a sacrifice and fellowship with God. They can't just enter in anytime they want. They have to have a sacrifice ready before they can even make a petition, to even talk to God. They have to have something sacrifice. So just the outer court is a layer of protection for the people. And then you get in, you offer your sacrifice. Now you're in the inner court. That's another, not everybody can fit in there. So it's just people go in, they do their sacrifice, and the priests are working there. They slaughter your animal, they cut it up, they throw it on the altar, it burns up. Certain pieces burn up, some you get to eat, some, the priests get to eat. It all depends. That's all laid out in Leviticus chapters 1-5. And then the priests can go into the tabernacle, and only the priests can go into the tabernacle and bring some of the blood and put it on the horns of put it on the horns of the altar, the brazen altar, which is outside, and then there's horns on the incense altar on the inside. So there's the table of showbread. Oh, got a different picture on there. This is a menorah. Oh, here we go. So on the inside, you have this giant menorah. It gets translated candlestick, but if you're thinking of like Downton Abbey early episodes where they have these giant candlesticks, that's not what you should be thinking. You should be thinking of a menorah. So Hanukkah is what you should be thinking about. And so you have this giant oil lamp, and everything is overlaid with gold. So when that thing is lit up, everything on the inside just reflects the light, all gold. You have the table of showbread, and that has, each loaf of bread represents each tribe of Israel, and it's all laid out. They have, that's where you have a fellowship meal with God. And that's not even like, you haven't even gotten to God's presence, which is behind the curtain. You have that curtain there, it's like red and blue, and it has like sphinx or pictures of angels, basically, there. And then before you cross through that, the veil, as that's called, you have the altar of incense, and so that represents the prayers of the people going up, and there's horns on the corners of that, and put some blood on that when you offer your blood sacrifice. Only priests can go into that room. That's the holy place. And then beyond that threshold, that curtain there, is the Ark of the Covenant, the mercy seat. That's where God's presence is. And only one time a year, and only one person can go in there, and only after like a week long ritual of cleansing before you can enter the presence of God. It happens once. It's the Day of Atonement. So as you get closer to the presence of God, fewer people can enter God's presence, and it's a lot less often, only once a year, because God is holy. And if you enter his presence in a state of uncleanness or unholiness, then problematic. His holiness will come out and take you out. So it can only happen after ritual cleansing. But how that's all put together, that's what's explored at the end of the book of Exodus. But that's just kind of like a visual of what it all looks like. So now we're going to do the run through, the summary of the story thus far. So God had rescued his people out of Israel, or rescued people out of Israel, had rescued his people Israel out of Egypt, Egyptian slavery, by means of great signs and wonders. Pharaoh was hard-hearted against the will of Yahweh. He rebelled against God's command of letting Israel go. And for that rebellion, God judged Pharaoh. Yahweh created a new nation by bringing the people through the chaos waters of the Red Sea. And you remember that had echoes of Genesis in that. Same way that the chaos waters of the original creation were swirling about, and then the Spirit of God hovered over those waters and started creating things. In the same way, the author of Exodus is hearkening back to Genesis to make you think that God is creating a new nation as they're going through the waters. But then there's also the idea of God is protecting them. Like water is the symbol of chaos, and as they go through, they're protected. But when Pharaoh and his armies go through, they're drowned. Chaos overtakes them because they're not living in accordance with the will of God. Then the people immediately complain and consistently complain, and they rebel against Yahweh as well, which is interesting. God is leading them to Mount Sinai, and they just complain and complain. They rebel against him. He gives them manna. He's like, hey, gather 6 days. On the 6th day, I'll give you a double portion. Don't go out on that 7th day. It's a Sabbath. Don't do it. They still do it. Like, there's rebellion. They're stiff-necked. We're going to see that in these closing chapters of Exodus, that's their kind of moniker, that they're a stiff-necked people. They're rebellious. Yet, God shows them mercy. And if you haven't caught this yet, you should see a tension here. You should see that God behaved towards Pharaoh one way and Israel another, even though they behaved the same. What was the difference? Was there a difference between Pharaoh and Israel? They repented. Okay. We're getting there. All right. God chose them. That's the only thing that makes them different from Pharaoh. Right? So is it their behavior? Does God favor people because of their behavior? Right? Okay, so they believe. So you see how you get, like, think through your theology, right? Did God save them because they were good? No, they weren't good. They were a lot like Pharaoh, and they continued to be a lot like Pharaoh. The moniker for Pharaoh was hard-heartedness. The descriptor for the people of Israel was stiff-necked, but it's basically the same thing. They're rebellious against God. And so it's like, okay, that's not the difference. The difference becomes what is God doing? Did God make a promise? Is God keeping his promise? And if you read through Deuteronomy, he eventually gets to the point where he's like, look, don't think you're special. Not because you're a great and mighty people. It's not because you've done anything. I love you because I've chosen to love you. As stiff-necked as you are, I'm still going to love you. Because they promise that they're going to keep the covenant. We're going to actually get there. All right, so, but there is a tension there. And you should think about that. Like, if you ever get to the point where you start to think that you're better than someone else, you're wrong. Period. You're not better than anybody else. When it comes to, like comparing yourself, like, see, God, you should love me more because that person is, whoa, I'm better than them. That's just wrong thinking. You're just as stiff-necked or hard-hearted as Pharaoh was. You should see a lot of Pharaoh in yourself. And that should make you go, oh, I need God. And then go, God. Instead of thinking, I'm better than them. I mean, if you're seeing like kind of the Pharisaical mindset in that, like you should. But let's continue on. God provided for the people water, manna, victory, and battle. God brought them to Mount Sinai and initiated a covenant with them. He spoke the law to the people, the 10 words, and the book of the covenant. By giving the law to Israel, God was again being the creator. He was creating a kingdom of priests, a holy nation, by ordering Israelite society according to his values. That's what the 10 words and the book of the covenant were all about. We just finished talking about that. Let's see. And then he demonstrated that he was committed to the people by promising to send his angel before them and to lead and fight for them as they go to take Canaan land, right? And they're going to take the promised land. This is the land that he had promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So God establishes this covenant with the people, and the people of Israel accept it. That's super important. Exodus 24, verse 3. All the people say, we're going to keep the covenant. So the people are ritually cleansed through burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Moses reads the scroll of the covenant to the people, and the people agree again to keep the covenant. Exodus 24, 4 through 8. Then Moses, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders go up the mountain. They saw the God of Israel, and then they eat a fellowship meal with him on the mountain, which is just mind-blowing. Mountain is on fire with his glory, and then they just walk into it and have a meal with him. It says they can see see, depends on how you interpret it, but they could see like his feet. Like he's sitting on a throne, looks like a human sitting on a throne. They could see the sapphire, it's almost like a dome, and they could see his feet resting on that, and then they eat a meal before him on Mount Sinai. They're in the presence of God. And it says they saw the Lord. I don't know how else you interpret that except that they saw the Lord, which becomes weird later when Moses asks to see God's face. God says, you can't see my face and live. How does that fit together? Fun little puzzle. All right. So they have this fellowship meal. Everything's great. Going to initiate the covenant. This is going to be awesome. And Moses goes up Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights, and he's going to receive the directions for how to build the tabernacle. So if God is going to dwell in the midst of his people, right in the middle of them, he needs a special place of his own. And it'll protect the people from his holiness. So that's what he goes up to get. And we get the directions for the tabernacle. So first, they're gathering materials for the tabernacle. And I'm just going to touch on specific verses that I've pulled out. This is like Exodus 25 all the way to like 31, the end of 31. So this is a huge chunk. And so narratively speaking, time kind of stops. If you can imagine, like if you're watching a movie and you see two characters sit down at a table and they're talking to one another and they have this long conversation, that's kind of what's happening here. Lord's sitting down at the table. Got his cup of coffee. He's like, all right, Moses, here's the blueprints. This is how you're going to do it. And it takes a long time. And when it says that Moses went up onto the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, and then you're reading in painstaking detail all the directions for all the furniture for the tabernacle and how it's going to be all put together, you really feel that 40 days. Like as you're reading, it's like, whoa, okay, how many cubits? What's a cubit? Like, ooh, okay, we're still going. Okay, all right. Oof. And it just keeps going and going, right? So I'm going to touch on a couple of verses, and hopefully you'll see a theme as I touch on them. So they're gathering materials for the tabernacle. It's Exodus 25, 1 through 9. Verses 8 and 9 read, and let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them. And that's what he wants. According to all that I show thee, after the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all the instruments thereof, so shall you make it. So he's like, there's a pattern here. I want you to follow it. This is very important. Next is the Ark of the Covenant. This is where God's presence will meet the high priest on the mercy seat. You have these two angels with their wings, like one doing this and then another one doing this, and it's kind of protecting you from God's glory. So verse 22, this is Exodus 25, 10 through 22. And there I will meet with thee, and I will commune with thee from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubim, which are upon the ark of the testimony, of all things which I give thee in the commandment unto the children of Israel. So, Ark of the Covenant. Next is the table and the menorah. This is in the holy place. So you were in the Holy of Holies, where God's presence is, in the Ark of the Covenant. There's a veil there. Now we're in the holy place. Verse 40, and look that thou make them after their pattern, which was showed thee in the mount. Exodus 25, 23 through 40. Then there's the tabernacle, right? Verse 30 in chapter 26. So we have all the instructions for the tabernacle, the whole tent, how it's all put together. That's Exodus 26, 1 through 37, so like almost the whole chapter. Verse 30 says, and thou shalt rear up the tabernacle according to the fashion thereof that I showed thee in the mount. So it goes in this order. There's the inner curtains, and that's like on the inside, where you have beautiful needlework, and you have angels stitched into the curtains. So as it's draped over, you can see the angel work in the curtains. It's blue and red. Then you have the outer curtains. That's like lambskins and ram's hair and all of that woven together. Then you have the framing. It describes how big a piece is. It says shittim wood, or it's acacia. It's the acacia tree or acacia wood. You make this frame. They're in the middle of the desert. There's not a lot of wood, but they're able to find enough to build a tabernacle. And it's this acacia tree that's really hardy. Lives in the desert. Then it talks about the veil, and that's the veil separating the holy place and the most holy place, or the Holy of Holies. And then you have the curtain, or the door, at the door of the tabernacle, and that separates the courtyard from the holy place. So again, we're getting these layers of separation between you and the Lord. Then there's the instruction for the altar of bronze. And this is where you offer your meat sacrifice out in the courtyard. This is Exodus 27, 1 through 8. Verse 8, hollow with boards shalt thou make it, as I showed thee in the mount, so shalt thou make it. Like, follow the pattern. Instructions for the courtyard. This is Exodus 27, 9 through 19. Verse 19 says, all the vessels of the tabernacle and the service thereof, all the pins thereof, and all the pins of the court shall be of brass. So notice, as we're getting closer to the presence of God, it goes from like nothing outside the whole courtyard, and then as you go in, all of the instruments are made of brass, and then all of the curtains and stuff that are hanging up, like the pillars are made of brass, and they have silver fixtures that hold the curtains. And then as you go into the tabernacle, everything's gold, and everything's overlaid with gold, because as you get closer, there's a difference of texture, and there's a difference of material as you get closer to God. Then there's the instructions for the oil, for the menorah. This is Exodus 27, 20, and 21. Verse 21 says, in the tabernacle of the congregation, without the veil, so not the Holy of Holies, but before that, which is before the testimony, Aaron and his sons shall order it from evening to morning before the Lord. It shall be a statute forever unto their generations on behalf of the children of Israel. So they're to keep this oil for the menorah burning all the time, right? And And if you know the story of the Maccabees, like they didn't have enough oil for the menorah, and this is why they celebrate Hanukkah, because they only had enough for like one day, but it lasted a whole week. Miracle. And anyways, they were supposed to keep it burning all the time. All right, that's the oil for the menorah. And we've got the directions for the priesthood. They have a lot of clothing, lots of clothing, and it's all like very detailed work. The priests are the sons of Aaron. They have special clothing for the office. This is Exodus 28 all the way through 29:46. So like 28 and 29 is all about the priesthood stuff. So clothing, verse 3 in chapter 28, and thou shalt speak unto the children, unto all that are wise-hearted, whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom, that they may make Aaron's garments to consecrate him, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office. So now there's going to be special workmen that create the clothing for Aaron and his sons. Verse 29, and Aaron shall bear the names of the children of Israel in the breastplate of judgment upon his heart when he goeth into the holy place for the memorial before the Lord continually. Now, we're just breezing through this. We're going to touch on the symbolism of all these things in the coming weeks, but all of this has a lot of symbolic value in what it represents. He's bringing the people of Israel before the presence of God, represented in the stones on the breastplate. And we'll touch on that, and then also how it points forward to Christ, and that's awesome. All right, so then there's the consecration. They have to sacrifice animals, anoint all the furniture, and all the priests and all the clothing. Everything gets anointed with oil, and then they're anointed with blood, the priests, on their right ear, their right thumb, and their right big toe. And then they regularly sacrifice every single day. And there's a regular sacrifice every day, verses 42 through 46. There shall be a continual burnt offering throughout your generations at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation before the Lord, where I will meet you to speak there unto thee. And there I will meet with the children of Israel, and the tabernacle shall be sanctified by my glory. And I will sanctify the tabernacle of the congregation and the altar. I will sanctify both Aaron and his sons to minister to me in the priest's office. And I will dwell among the children of Israel, and will be their God. And they shall know that I am their Lord their God, and brought them forth out of the land of Egypt, that I may dwell among them. I am the Lord their God. So it's like, here's the directions on how we're going to consecrate everything, and the priests, and what they're going to do. So that way you know that I'm the Lord, and I want to be with you. This is what I want. We're setting all this up so I can be with you. It's going to be awesome. And the Lord's looking forward to it. Then we have the instructions for the altar of incense, Exodus 30, 1 through 10. So before the mercy seat where Yahweh meets with his people, there's the altar of incense. And it's before you go through the veil to the Holy of Holies. Verse 6, and thou shalt be there, and thou shalt put it before the veil, that is, by the ark of the testimony, before the mercy seat, that is over the testimony, where I will meet with thee. So this is to symbolize the prayers of the people going before God. Then there's the instructions for the brass, or there's the census of the people. And then there's the instructions for the brass laver. So that's this giant bowl full of water. That's how the priests would ritually cleanse themselves before they entered the tabernacle. They would be slaughtering animals and be covered in blood. And so before they would go into the tabernacle, they would have to wash themselves ritually, and then they could enter in. So the priests would wash before offering the people sacrifices to the Lord. Verse 20, this is Exodus 17 through 21. Verse 20 says, when they go into the tabernacle of the congregation, they shall wash with water, that they die not. So this, like, they would die if they didn't wash. Super important. And when they come near to the altar to minister, to the burnt offering made by fire unto the Lord, they're supposed to wash. Instructions for the anointing oil and perfume. All the furniture and the priests are anointed with special oil. This consecrates them, makes them different from everybody else in Israel. That way they can minister to the Lord. And it's only for sacred use. This is Exodus 30, 22 through 38. Verse 30 says, and thou shalt anoint Aaron and his sons and consecrate them, that they may minister unto me in the priest's office. Verse 36 says, and thou shalt beat some of it very small, and put it before the testimony of the tabernacle of the congregation, where I will meet with thee. It shall be unto you most holy. So again, God is planning to meet with them. He wants to be among them. Right. Now we have special craftsmen to make everything for worship. Who pronounce these names is a little tough. Bezaleel, yeah, that one, and Ahishamach. There to make all the stuff, and they're special craftsmen because they get the Spirit of the Lord with them to help them make all the things. So, verses 3 through 5. This is Exodus 31, 1 through 11. 3 through 5. And I have filled them with the Spirit of God, in wisdom, and in understanding and knowledge, and all manner of workmanship, to devise cunning works, to work in gold, and in silver, and in brass, and in cutting stones, to set them up, in the carving of timber, to work in all manner of workmanship. So now God is not only saying, I want you to build it according to a certain pattern, but I'm going to help you build it to the pattern that I want. Like, it's going to be the way that I want it. Then there's instruction for the Sabbath, Exodus 31, 12 through 18. This is a picture of holiness for the people. They're mimicking God. They're behaving like God during the creation week, right? You work 6 days and then you rest on the seventh, because that's what God did when he created everything. And in verse 18 it says, and he gave unto Moses, when he had made an end of communing with him upon Mount Sinai, 2 tablets of testimony, tablets of stone, written with the finger of God. Whoa. That's 40 days. All of that. And like, it took me minutes just to summarize it, right? Imagine just like, it's a lot of chapters, right? 24 all the way to 32. And you get there and you should be thinking, man, so ready to worship. It's going to be awesome. God's going to dwell among us. It's fantastic. Very next chapter, the golden calf. It should just like slam into your face, like someone punches you in the face with the most awful thing in the world. That's how it should, narratively, that's how it should feel. And that's why it's structured this way. The golden calf, it's awful. We're going to touch on that a lot more in the coming weeks. So people ask Aaron to make a golden calf. They're like, hey, I don't know where Moses is at. He's been up on the mountain for a long time. We need a God. And Aaron's like, sure, give me your gold earrings. And then they form a golden calf, and then they worship. And when they're worshiping, that's when Moses comes down with these 2 tablets of the testimony of the covenant that they just said that they were 40 days earlier. They said that they would agree to follow. And Aaron's like, this is the God that, like, hey, it's not that bad. This is the God that brought you out of Egypt. We're worshiping the same thing-ish. Right? It's bad. It's real bad. They are a stiff-necked people. And that's why God can't be around them. That's what this amounts to. God is trying to set up this situation where he can be in the midst of his people, but they're stiff-necked. And he's like, if I enter into the midst of them, I'm going to consume them all. It's a bad situation. Moses intercedes for the... Can't wait to talk about that. It's so good. Yahweh listens to Moses and he relents. There are consequences. And the way that he structures his prayer is very instructive for us. So Yahweh listens to Moses and he relents. Moses burns the golden calf, grounds it into powder, and has the people drink it. And then Aaron tries to blame the people. Doesn't take any responsibility for himself. And then he makes it sound like a miracle. He's like, I just threw this gold in the fire and out jumped this calf. It was crazy. Oh, we thought it was the Lord. It had to be the Lord, right? And that's a miracle. So Moses intercedes for, Moses orders the Levites to kill the rebels. 3,000 men die. Moses intercedes for Israel again, and he offers himself in place for Israel. You don't see Jesus there. Woo. And then Yahweh sends a plague on the people that rebelled against him. And this is an important verse 32 or verse 33 in chapter 32. And the Lord said unto Moses, whoever hath sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book. So it's the people that rebelled, the individual, not the whole people. Right? And we get an echo of that in Ezekiel. The soul that sins, that's the one that's going to die. Don't say, oh, it's because of what our fathers did. That's why we're suffering. The next generation suffers because of what the fathers did. It's like, calm down. You have your own sin. That's why you die. Because your own sin, not someone else's fault. You can't blame it on somebody else. So Moses makes intercession with Yahweh again in chapter 33. And God says, I can't be around him because they're stiff-necked people. And then he asks to see God's glory, and he gets to see kind of his back, not his face. Again, we'll look at that at another time. So, the covenant is renewed. Exodus 34 makes new tablets of stone. God proclaims his name to Moses, and that's one of my favorite passages. It's so good. And that's actually part of our verse alert. It's verse 6. It's verses 5 through 7 in chapter 34. And then Moses asked God to go in the midst of the people because they are a stiff-necked people. So God's like, I can't do it. You're stiff-necked people, I'm going to consume you. And Moses goes, please, please go with us and be in among us because of that very reason. Whoa. What is humanity and who is God? They're big questions that are being answered. All right. So then we have the covenant is renewed. Moses' face is shining because he's before the Lord, and now it shines, and the people are afraid of him. Get that little section. And then we have Sabbath regulations. And then it's the construction of the tabernacle. And so you get it all over again for another 10 chapters. Not quite that much. It's 5, but feels like 10. And so then you get spirit-filled workmen. They do the task. They get overwhelming contributions, and the people are told to stop giving towards building the tabernacle. And it's the inside curtains, the outer curtains, the framing of the tabernacle, veil that separates the holy place from the most holy place, the ark, the table, the menorah, altar of incense, altar of burnt offering, the brass laver, the courtyard, materials for the construction is all accounted for and described. And then they make the priestly garments, the ephod, the breastplate, the robe, coats, the turban, the undergarments, the crown. Everything is completed, brought to Moses, and it was built just as God had told him to do it. Then the tabernacle is actually erected, and everything is set up and anointed with oil, including the priests. And the order is ark, veil, table, menorah, altar of incense, brass laver, courtyard, altar of burnt offering, priests. So we're moving from the most holy place outward in the order in that it's put, erected and put together. Then the glory of the Lord fills the tabernacle. Chapter 40, verses 34 through 38. And it's so dense, the smoke of his presence is so dense that even Moses gets pushed out of the tabernacle. Even he can't stand before the Lord, even though he stands before the Lord regularly and speaks to him as a friend does, face to face. He gets pushed out. So magnificent. And that's the end of the book. And that's the climax. God is actually dwelling in the middle of his people. That's amazing. So that's just a summary of all this stuff. Now, to look at some macro stuff. This is all from the Torah story, which is written by Schnitzer, German guy. Anyways, he has a really good outline, and hopefully the colors help point out how awful the rebellion is in chapter 32. So notice how he outlines it. So the two yellow ones, I added those two. The two different blue ones and then the orange one, that was his outline. I added the two outer. I thought that actually kind of fits. But it makes it makes this kind of chiasm structure. And so the rest of the book is structured in this way, so that way you'll see that the rebellion in chapter 32 is the worst possible thing that could possibly happen. So it's covenant between Yahweh and Israel is established, and they fellowship with God. It's Exodus 24. We get all the instructions for the tabernacle. That's chapters 25 through 31. And then there's a small section about the Sabbath. What's that doing there? Kind of weird. And then you get the rebellion, the golden calf, and the presence of God, because Moses wants to see God's presence. And then the covenant is renewed. And then there's another little 3 verses on the Sabbath. What's that doing there? And then you get the whole construction, talk about the tabernacle, Exodus 35 all the way through 40. And then right at the very end, the glory of the Lord, glory of Yahweh fills the tabernacle. You have this structure, and right at the kind of the point where you go back is the most awful thing. It's the golden calf incident. So what this does, and I hope this next slide will help you see, it sets up larger concepts, and the structure of the book is actually, at least this section of the book, setting you up to think in a certain way. So we have people fellowshipping with Yahweh, and there's holy space. That's the tabernacle. There's a holy space. And then Sabbath, holy time. And then there's rebellion. And then there's another bit about the Sabbath, holy time, then holy space, and then Yahweh dwelling in the midst of his people. Like right at the heart of all of this holiness is rebellion. And that's why the Lord says, I can't dwell among you. Right? It's helpful to observe the structure of the last sections. There's a mirror imaging going on. So, the climax of the story is that Yahweh dwells in the midst of his people. But what comes before and after the golden calf is the teaching of the Sabbath and the instructions for the tabernacle. So it makes this envelope of holy space and time that surround the rebellion. And so, to quote Schnitzer, it says, the location of the rebellion set within the double envelope of holy time and holy space makes it all the more obscene. Like, it should look really, really terrible when you see it that way. And then I have a really long quote from Schnitzer, and hopefully this will kind of draw it all together, and then we'll talk about how it's a pattern for all the Bible. So, quoting him from the Torah story, says the narrative in Exodus 25 through 31 is an almost static depiction of Moses' reception of the tabernacle instructions on the mount for 40 days. The remarkable aspect of the dwelling is the vision of Moses. God instructed him, quote, make this dwelling and all its furnishings exactly like the pattern I will show you. Exodus 25:9. The idea of according to the pattern that I show you in the mountain is repeated 3 more times. Exodus 25:40, 26:30, and 27:8. And just as Yahweh commanded Moses several more times, that phrase is found in chapter 31:11, 39:32, and then in 39 it's in verses 32, 42, and 43. So, on the mountain, Moses received a vision of the dwelling. The dwelling in the encampment was to be made in accord with the vision on the mountain. The writer of the letter of Hebrews described the dwelling as a copy and a shadow of what is in heaven. That's in Hebrews 8, 1 through 5. That is, he believed that Moses saw the dwelling of God, which is in the realm of God. The theological significance of this point relates to matters of worship and relationship with God. It was the people's responsibility to make their realm accord with God's realm. I think that's really important. I'm going to read it again. It was the people's responsibility to make their realm accord with God's realm. I think a phrase from the Lord's Prayer captures the spirit of the challenge. On earth as it is in heaven. That's what we are to do. That's Matthew 6:10. God graciously chose to dwell with the Hebrew community. The new proximity between him and them created new responsibility for them to make him a dwelling in accord with his own dwelling in heaven. I had it in heaven. Once he inhabited it, the glory created a whole new reality for them, explained at length in Leviticus. In this context, we learn that God would graciously condescend to dwell with his people as the featured part of their community, but they needed to prepare him a place in their midst that accorded with his own place. He compensated for their inability by granting Moses a vision of the dwelling, and when it came to its construction, his own assistance. What he means by that is he put his spirit on those special craftsmen, build it the way that he wanted. And this is the pattern for all of the Bible. This is it's the same. It's like an echo of it constantly, right? You have heaven and earth at creation. Heaven and earth touch at the Garden of Eden. So God creates his own space in the Garden of Eden, and that's where heaven touches earth. And he wants to have a human family to rule over all the earth. So he creates the first two humans and he goes, okay, go and expand this garden out into the world. That's what they were to do. They rebel against that. Like, all of this should sound very familiar with Israel, right? And so, but the idea is to move the Garden of Eden more so the kingdom of God spreads. It moves from, so then there's rebellion. God removes himself, right? And then he's like, I still want this. So he sets up a covenant, or he makes a promise to Abraham, right? And he moves from heaven to Mount Sinai. So he calls the people out of Egypt, and he goes from heaven to Mount Sinai, and he gives the covenant, and then he moves from Mount Sinai to the Tabernacle. Now God is back, and all the pictures of the stuff on the curtains and stuff, all of that is supposed to picture Eden. Like, we're getting back to Eden. We're going to spread this out. They're going to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation to spread out God's presence into the world. But then the exile happens. God's presence leaves the temple. What do we see in the New Testament? Same thing. We are the holy space in which God dwells. You are the tabernacle. Right? How is that? How can God dwell in the midst of a sinful people? God makes us whole, or Jesus makes us holy. That way God can dwell, the Holy Spirit can dwell within us. And the church spreads the gospel. Yeah, it's just like Adam and Eve spreading out the Garden of Eden. Are the people of Israel supposed to be a holy, priests of a holy nation, a kingdom of priests? The gospel spreads through the church, and it brings heaven on earth, as it is in heaven, on earth, right? And the gates of hell shall not prevail against the church. What that means is, as the church is spreading this message out, the gates of hell cannot withstand the gospel. It will go forward. God's kingdom will spread across the earth. That's what's going to happen. It's the same. It's basically just like another iteration of what God is trying to do. All right, here in the tabernacle. It's really cool. That's all macro stuff. We'll look at all the furnishings and what they symbolize. We'll look at the intercession of Moses with God multiple times. He does that. How God proclaims his name and what that looks like. We've looked at that in a sermon, but again, just like rehashing that is my favorite thing. And then God's glory filling tabernacle, and that'll bring us up to the end of the year. Then, what's it? FBI class, January. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, thank you so much for this morning. Thank you for your word. Thank you that you've given us a picture of what it means for you to dwell in the midst of your people. Lord, thank you so much that we don't have to sacrifice all these animals. We don't have to have a single point where you have to travel and go and worship you. Lord, thank you so much that all of that has been fulfilled in Christ, and that through him we can just walk right into your presence and bring our petitions to you. We can worship you anytime, anywhere, because your very presence is within us, because you've made us holy through your Son, Jesus Christ. Like, it's just so amazing what you've done. The theological importance is huge. Thank you so much for your love, for your grace, for consistently showing grace and mercy to the people of Israel, how you continue to do that for us. Help us to worship you. Help us to have right hearts. Help us to get our thinking correct before we worship you through praising you and singing songs, and then through the preaching of your word. Be with the speaker this morning. Help us to worship you in Jesus' name.